What's going on, guys? Welcome to another video of The Sauce. In today's video, we finally reached the midway part mark of the season. No thanks to the sluggish start for the Dallas Stars. Let's get into it. Alright, so as I mentioned before, this is the mid-season update, and it's a little bit over mid-season because the Dallas Stars took so long to get to 28 games to technically be in the middle of the season, so that's what I was waiting for. So, as of the Dallas Stars getting to their 28th, and I think this is the 29th game where I have these standings, so sorry about that. But anyway, so I'm comparing the actuals with my original predictions, so they'll be side by side throughout the video, and because it's a mid-season update, I want to touch on some high points and some low points. It's a lot of talking, so let's get saucing. Okay, so in similar fashion as I've been doing before in every other video, we're starting off with the North Division. So in the North Division, predictions and actuals over here for you. As you can see, I've got 3 correct. In Toronto sitting at number 1, Montreal sitting at number 4, and then Ottawa sitting in last place of the North Division. But that's no big deal. The future looks bright for the Ottawa Senators. I mean, the Ottawa Senators fans should expect this. You know, they're in a rebuild state, but there's a lot of bright spots for the Senators team, and they are really fun to watch. As I'm recording this video, like I said, a couple days after the 20th game for the Dallas Stars, the Senators just beat the Calgary Flames. So, I mean, they're looking good, and I mean, the Flames are not looking good, but hey, good news, Senators fans. Okay, so blending some of the high points and low points, as I mentioned before, both the Montreal Canadiens and the Calgary Flames fired their coaches earlier in the season. Montreal was much earlier in the season. Like I mentioned in a prior video, they were one of the hotter teams. They were looking for real. They could really battle for that first spot against Toronto. They kind of came crashing down to earth, started on a bit of a losing streak. But early in the season, the GM fired the head coach, Claude Julien. I don't know the current head coach's name, but it's okay. They've still kind of come back down to earth and plateaued a little bit. As for Calgary, they hired a veteran coach in Suter, and that's done well for them so far. No, it really hasn't. Calgary has just been super inconsistent, and it's great to have a veteran head coach, a Stanley Cup winning head coach at that. But Calgary is just one of those teams, man. They cannot get consistency. They can't, as I mentioned, they just lost to Ottawa, and I don't know what to make of this Calgary team. I had them in my top 4, but as you can see from the standings, it's not looking good, and I don't think they're going to make the playoffs. Them or Vancouver, unfortunately. Vancouver has the most games played in the North Division, and Edmonton and Toronto and Winnipeg could be running away with it. Okay, last thing on the North Division. So again, Toronto and Edmonton. Austin Matthews in Toronto, Connor McDavid in Edmonton. They will not play any other team until it gets to the Final Four. So this is huge for Toronto and Edmonton. Toronto especially does not have to play Boston unless they get to the last 2 teams. So this is good. This is really good. So this is their best chance, I think, to make it to that Final Four and possibly the Eastern, Western. I don't know how they're going to mark it up, but that conference final and possibly contend for the Cup. So we'll see. Moving on. All right, and the West Division. So the West Division, I mean, it hasn't really moved much, and I think my predictions are pretty darn close. There's a few teams swapped here and there. You can see it up on the screen in front of you. But again, you have the powerhouses, Vegas and Colorado, sitting at number 1 and 2, like I said that they would, and like we knew that they would. But I'll tell you what, some highlights, some exciting teams to watch are Minnesota and LA. So LA has been in the rebuild phase. You know, they've more or less announced it, and they have a lot of young talent in their locker room. And Jonathan Quick is looking like the Jonathan Quick of years past in net, and that's really helping these, you know, young stars really just get into this winning culture that the LA Kings had in, 2014, 2000. Oh my gosh, when did they win the Cup? 14. It was LA, Chicago, LA for a while there. So it was back and forth, and they just had this winning culture in that locker room and for that franchise. So LA's future looks bright. Jonathan Quick's playing great. And then the Minnesota Wild, usually a competing team, a contending team, but they're always middle of the road, which has kind of hurt the franchise because they've never had that #1 overall pick. But I'll tell you what, Kirill Kaprizov is the real deal, and Kaapo Kähkönen in net, phenomenal. I have both of those guys in my fantasy hockey team, and they're both just phenomenal players. And you know, night in and night out, they just show such flashes of greatness, and the future looks bright for this Minnesota Wild and LA Kings team. Really hard to find some lowlights for this Western Conference, by the way. As I mentioned before, for LA and Minnesota, the future looks bright, but another one I want to throw in there is Anaheim. Guys like Jamie Drysdale on the blue line, Trevor Zegras up front, and again, I mentioned their poor goaltender, John Gibson. He's a phenomenal goaltender. Even though the Ducks are towards the bottom of the standings, the Ducks compete every single game. I'm sure there's going to be a few guys sold at the trade deadline. They're going to be traded away from Anaheim for picks, for cap space, ready for the Seattle expansion draft coming up at the end of the year. But again, future looks bright for Anaheim as well. Minnesota, LA, what else more can I say? I've said Vegas, Colorado. I'm pretty close to my predictions. I'm happy with this one. Move on to the next one. All right, in the Central Division. So again, we got predictions, got actuals here for you. And just like the North Division, I've only got 3 right. I have Tampa at #1, Carolina at #2, and I have Detroit in dead last. So almost exactly like the North Division, fairly close there. But again, I gotta say, with the Central Division, I'm really happy to see these Southern teams at the top. It really helps grow the game. You know, Tampa at #1, Carolina at #2, you know, Florida Panthers at #3. So it's outstanding to see these Southern teams just, and again, I know the Central Division has a lot of Southern teams, you know, like Nashville, Dallas. So I think that's going to help grow the game, help that compete level for these teams and the fan bases there. So it's a lot of fun to see. I'll move on to the next talking point, but that's just a really, you know, happy note for me there is that these Southern teams are doing so well. Speaking of doing well, so Tampa Bay, their goaltender, Andrei Vasilevsky, is now at 12 straight wins, and I think the record is 14 straight wins, so he's not too far off. That's an awesome record if he can break that. It's just one of the huge highlights. I know it's Tampa, I know I'm a little biased, but anyway, that's just an outstanding achievement. I really hope he gets to it. You know, I hope I'm not jinxing him, knock on wood there. But again, Florida Panthers are looking great. They're really going to compete for a playoff spot. They could make some moves at the trade deadline. Carolina Hurricanes, one thing, I'm going to say it now on YouTube, I really hope they go out and get Eric Staal, their former captain who won the Stanley Cup with them, who wasn't captain then. I really hope he comes back to Carolina at the deadline. Get him out of Buffalo. Let him finish his career where he started it. Please, please make it happen. So a couple other things. I don't want to seem biased and stay in the Central Division, but Columbus and Nashville battling it out for that 4th, 5th spot. You know, Columbus I thought was out of it. I thought Nashville was out of it. And all of a sudden, Chicago has come down to earth. As I mentioned, I had another team that had the same thing, like Montreal in the North Division. Chicago was on a huge hot start. Right now, they're still in that 4th spot, as you can see. However, Columbus is right on their tail. Nashville's right on their tail. This battle for 4th place between those 3 teams is going to be super exciting. And then the low point about that is that Dallas, I don't think, is going to make the playoffs. They have so many games in hand, but I don't know, they look flat. They haven't beaten Tampa at all this season, which again, it's one team, so what? You don't beat them, no big deal. But I just don't see it. I was really hoping that Dallas would lock in that 4th spot. But again, that's why you do these prediction videos. You could be right, you could be wrong, you could have people screaming at you in the comments, it's part of the job, so whatever. But anyway, so with Dallas, again, I don't think they're going to get that 4th spot, but you know, they just have had rotten luck with COVID and injuries and weather, and better luck next year. What did I say there? Luck? I don't know. Better luck next year, Dallas. All right, so for the East Division, as you can see, not a single one right. I told you, this is the toughest division to predict. It was the toughest one, and I knew these predictions and these actuals were going to be all over the place. But you know what? I'll lick my wounds. I still got some time left in the season. Who knows? Maybe I could be right on some of these. Maybe I could be wrong on every single one. Who knows? But we got to get into some of these highlights and lowlights of this Eastern Division. So I want to focus on the lowlights. You know, in the other divisions, they were kind of blended. I briefly touched on a highlight or a lowlight, or again, they were blended. But this one is super distinct. Lowlights, two big ones that I want to talk about here. The Philadelphia Flyers, I had them at number 1, and they are a fantastic team. They have so much talent from the front to the net, from the net out. It's just a fantastic team, but I don't know what's happened. They've dove off a cliff, and some of these games that I've watched have been really hard to watch because they just can't seem to connect a couple of passes, and they just can't seem to get anything going. Brian Elliott and Carter Hart can't seem to stop a beach ball, and it's bad. If they don't get it together quick, they could be on the outside looking in, which would be a huge, huge loss for this Flyers team. It would be a huge damper in everything they've accomplished thus far, and I really don't know. It's going to be tough with Boston, Pittsburgh, New York, all teams right in that same mix as them, and then New York slowly coming on the hot streak, so we'll see. And next, I've said it before, I'll say it again, Buffalo. Oh boy, it's just really hard to watch. You can say whatever you want. It's a dumpster fire, it's atrocious, it's awful. Again, I feel bad for the Buffalo Sabres fans. I wanted Buffalo to do well this year. You all deserved a better season from Buffalo this year. Jack Eichel deserves better this year. Like, it's just hard. It's really hard. They're on a 14-game losing streak at the time of this recording, and it just keeps, there's no rock bottom. And, you know, good for them that they fired their head coach, which was Ralph Kruger, I think. Awful. You know, there was talks about how they were flat in practice and there was no reprimands for it. So it's like, of course, if they're doing that in practice, that's how they're going to play. So it's good that they finally did that, and they're hopefully moving on from that. So I guess the last thing I want to talk about with Buffalo, and I don't know how true this story is, but I never talked on it with other videos, and it's just, again, it's very meme-worthy. It's very funny. Well, kind of funny, but not funny. There was this guy who bought a cardboard cutout of his grandmother, his Nana. He was a huge Buffalo Sabres fan, and they had her in the stands. And again, I don't know how true this is, but apparently his grandmother passed away, and which is unfortunate, but he begged Buffalo to give him the cardboard cutout back because he didn't want her to suffer through this anymore. And that just sums it up, what's going on with Buffalo. So it's the last thing I'll say about Buffalo. Let's talk some highlights, man. So as I mentioned before, highlights. New York is on the up and up. Artemi Panarin's back. Mika Zibanejad is finding that touch. Ryan Strome is finding his touch. The young goalies in Igor Shesterkin and Alexander Georgiev are playing well again. So I really hope this Rangers team pushes for that spot like I said they would. Not much really to focus on there. I'm just really happy that the Rangers are finding their groove again. So a couple more bright spots. So they're the only two teams I have in the top 4. They may be out of order than I had them. However, they're still in the top 4. So Washington currently the number 1 spot. You know, Peter Laviolette, a Stanley Cup winning coach, a Stanley Cup competing coach, has really helped that Washington Capitals team really find their groove. They never really had a slow start, but they did kind of plateau a little bit earlier in the season. But I mean, they've really found their stride, and this Washington Capitals team is going to be really dangerous come playoff time. And then continuing on with the New York Islanders, the other top team, they have a lot of young, bright spots. Again, they're a stout defensive team, but Oliver Wahlstrom, one of their young forwards, is doing really well. He's put up a couple of really good games in recent history. And Ilya Sorokin, their young goaltender, wow, I mean, these Russian goalies are just phenomenal. These young Russian goalies have such a bright future. They have Semyon Varlamov as their starter, who I've mentioned in a previous video, and, you know, Ilya Sorokin, who just, I mean, that goaltending tandem is lights out. They're already a stout defensive team, as I've already mentioned, and behind Barry Trotz, who plays that style, those two goalies have it made in the shade, man. And the team around them just plays so well. So, again, good to see that the Islanders are doing well. Oh, I guess I did get one right. Huh. Islanders are number 2. How did I miss that? Oh, well, I'm catching it now. So, eating my words earlier, I got one right. So that's something. But I think that's all I have for the Eastern Division. Again, some good bright spots, but man, some really low spots. That's it for that. All right, so some team and individual stats that I wanted to get into. So I mentioned this in, I think, the second month or first month recap, but I wanted to bring it back because I really did like the stats, and hopefully I haven't lost all of you yet. So leading the league in goals, points, assists, Connor McDavid, and that should come as no surprise. Again, in the North Division, not only does that division not play a whole lot of defense, but Connor McDavid, Leon Draisaitl, and that offensive powerhouse of a team, no surprise. It should come as no surprise that he's leading in all these categories. So that's honestly it for individual stats, at least for forwards. So I'll go into some of the goalie stats as well. All right, so for goalies, two major netminders hold the main stats here. And again, I want to do it off a minimum games played of 10. So Philip Grubauer leads the league in goals against average with 1.71 and leads the league in shutouts with 5. So again, he was in the last video, if you recall, and he's just continued to improve on this great season for the Colorado Avalanche. Now the other goalie, Big Cat Andrei Vasilevskiy with 21 wins on the season and a .933 save percentage. You know, he's also in the Vezina talks for the best goalie in the NHL, and these two cats are doing a fantastic job in net. So, and both their teams respectively are playing fantastic. So it's good to see. All right, and then the team stats. So highest power play percentage is the Carolina Hurricanes with 30.9 currently. So they lead the league in power play with Tampa right behind them. And then on the penalty kill, you have the Boston Bruins with an 89.7. And again, I believe they were in the last video, correct me if I'm wrong. So this Boston team, no matter what guys you plug and remove out of the lineup, however you want to do it, they're a stout defensive team. They're a strong team overall. And it's crazy to see that Boston is, well, not crazy to see, but yeah, kind of crazy to see they're doing so well with some of the big moves that they had in the offseason. So those are the team stats that I wanted to get into. I guess the last team stat, Tampa's currently #1 in the NHL, and Buffalo is dead last in the NHL. So, oh boy, we'll see where this goes. All right, ladies and gentlemen, it has been a long video, so if you've made it to the end, I appreciate you watching this long. Make sure you click like, click subscribe, share this to all your friends. If you didn't like it, share it to your enemies, make them watch it again and again and again. At least we get views, so that's one thing there. But all jokes aside, I really wanted this to be a little bit longer of a video just because there's a lot to dissect here in the middle of the season. So again, thank you all so much for watching. I really enjoy making these videos for you all. I've started to see some comments out there, some hockey fans that I personally know watching the video, so I appreciate the support. And those non-hockey fans, I really hope this is bringing you to the game that I love so much and I love sharing with you all. So again, thanks for watching. Stay saucy.